Oh, hi, Kelly.
Hello, Pete. So good to see you.
Likewise, likewise. I'm so glad that we get to hang out today and
Me
talk
too.
through your storied sales career. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you MSP for putting on this allows us to bring together absolutely fantastic members of the modern sales community like Kelly here to share their knowledge. Before we get started here, we're just going to do a couple of like brief intros. I'll go first, and then Kelly can introduce herself, and she'll kind of get it more meaningfully into like her arc here in a second. But I'm Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. Atrium makes data-driven sales management software that helps sales managers, leaders, and reps use metrics to improve team performance. Prior to Atrium, I started a software company called Talentpin that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014, and that's kind of where I went from being a business generalist founder, product marketer, product manager type, to being our first seller, to being our first sales manager, to being our sales leader. When we were acquired by Monster Worldwide, I was responsible for new product sales there, so it's a little bit different. And then I wrote a book on sales, startup sales, called Founding Sales. Subsequent to that, so I do a little thinking about modern sales stuff. Oh, actually, and I also founded Modern Sales Pros. Forgot about that one.
That's an
Cool. So
important one.
forgot about that one. Just a little thing. So that's a little bit about me. Kelly, maybe you could give folks a little context on like what you spend your time doing now, and kind of like the kind of the roles before that, before we kind of get through kind of like the big kind of career arcs that you've had.
Absolutely. So, Pete, again, thank you so much for hosting me today. And it's really exciting to see everything that Modern Sales Pros is doing. And I too have spent my entire career really focused on sales and go to market. And so, right now, I'm board director of multiple companies at Gong, at Lucid, at Plum Technologies. And I also am founder of Culture Driven Sales. Most recently, I spent a bit of time as president and COO at Gong, which is an amazing company, and excited to talk more about Gong today. And prior to Gong, I spent 12 years at Tableau Software, where I ran all of sales and revenue facing there for over 12 years. I was number 10 employee at Tableau, took it all the way through. So been very privileged to work with some of the most transformational companies out there in tech and be part of those growth and scale journeys. So excited to be here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I've never heard of Tableau. Has anyone else ever heard of Tableau? No. Like, yeah, that's I mean, that's a serious sales organization, and I can't believe that I forgot that you were employee 10 there.
I was
Um,
I was the first salesperson. I joined 1 month before we launched version 1 of the software. So I was there really early days, basically zero in revenue to 850 million in revenue. So that was
yeah,
a fun run.
yeah, absolutely crazy. And yeah, I think it would be really great to kind of talk through a little bit of what that arc looked like, because I think you were a consultant before you joined Tableau, and then like maybe you can talk through kind of like the different eras of Tableau, and then how and then going from that to non-sales leadership, if you will, like being a president and a CEO. It's a little bit different. Maybe you can kind of take us through some of that.
Oh, so I've had a lot of different moves throughout my career. So just to kind of run through my career arc, I actually started my career in sales because I've
Hmm.
pretty much been in sales my entire career with a couple little forays here and there. But I started my career in sales back when I was in college. I worked for this company called Southwestern Company, and I
Hmm.
sold educational books door to door in my summers in college. So for 4 summers in college, I was working 80 to 100 hours a week, talking to 30 to 35 families in their home
Wow.
about their family's education. And that's where I really learned the foundation of hard work, grit, being able to control what you can control, because it's hard selling door to door, the hardest job I've ever done, because you can't control who's going to slam door in your face, and that happens lots and lots of times. So I talked to over 12,000 families in their homes for my 4 summers in college. And I
Wow.
love doing sales so much that and I had done pretty well. So I did some sales training for other folks that were selling books, and I fell in love
Hmm.
with that. And then I went to go work for Dale Carnegie Training to actually teach sales training and management
Hmm.
training and public speaking training. Did that for a short time. Then I went and sold residential mortgages at Bank of America. So I started selling books, then I sold training, then I sold mortgages. Then I thought, you know what? I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be able to do something that's more broader and general in management. So went
Hmm.
to business school. That's when I did consulting. After business school, I
Got it.
worked a short bit of time at McKinsey and
It
Bain
was a
doing
detour.
strategy. Yeah, doing strategy consulting, but it really helped because it helped to frame how you could think about strategic problems and how to think more broadly than sales and go to market to understand all the different components of building a business. And after I did strategic consulting, then I thought, you know, I really want to be in tech. I want to be to driving those transformation. I started first at a really small startup called Ad Hoc, where I was on an offer a number of years to start my career early in biz dev, sales, all that. And then that's when I joined as the first salesperson at Tableau. And from Tableau, you know, I was there for 12 years. Took 5 years to just do board work and
Yeah.
teaching and do my thought leadership. Then jumped back into operational work to go back to Gong, still in go to market, but more broad than just sales, to own all of go to market as the president and COO. And then now I'm in my next chapter of back in board work and thought leadership. So
Yeah, I mean, so Tableau, I feel that like your tenure at Tableau is very representative of how do you pronounce it? Tableauans? What are the like how what are the
we
people who
call it the
are
data fam, actually.
the data fam? Got it. So
Yeah,
there's
because our
not a
ticker was data, DATA. So.
yeah. So I feel that like Tableau um definitely had like like had a culture of very substantial tenure. Like every time I do pre-call planning when meeting with a former Tableau sales leader. So first of all, at Atrium, we actually have there's like a set of like companies like prior sales leadership that like we look out for. It's like Box, LinkedIn, Tableau. It's like organizations that have a very data-driven culture because usually that ends up being like that's a good leading indicator for that like the call is going to go well with Atrium. But then the interesting thing is that when you go and you look at the Tableau people, you have folks who are there for like 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, what have you. And like, obviously you're very representative of that. Maybe you can kind of take us through like the different epochs there, kind of like, what it was like very, very early on when like, I think Tableau was like a desktop app, if I recall correctly. I think I actually had Tableau on my
We were
IBM,
also for a long time at
T
Tableau. Yeah, long
T
time.
T T40, like 15 years ago or whatever, all the way to becoming like a cloud offering and like going from like obviously a very small sales organization to like a massive world conquering sales org.
Well, that's a big question. Like that
I
is,
know.
how did we evolve over the course of time? I think, Pete, like what some of the main tenets of building any business, not just building Tableau, was first is we everyone was very aligned on the mission. Like we had a very clear mission statement at Tableau was help people see and understand data. And it was easy to understand. It was what everyone did. And it really helped to create the why of the organization. So when people came in, they knew what we were doing, how we were trying to help our customers. And then it helped to drive all decisions. So that's kind of first. I think secondly is, at Tableau, we were very, very always talking about what our core values are. And I think that that's true for all the companies I've been involved in. I mean, this is very true for Gong as well, where Gong called it operating principles, Tableau called it core values. But some people just take these mission and core values as kind of words on the wall, but those were really central to everything we did. So there was a very, very clear why of what the mission and vision of the company was, but then in the core values of being very clear on those core values so everyone understood what was it that how did we operate together, like what was important and central to the company of how we hired, how we performance managed, how we made internal decisions, how we treated and engaged with the customers. And those weren't just words on the wall. Those were words that we lived and breathed by. And that it helped us to make promotion decisions, hiring decisions, have discussions with our customers about what was important and what they should be able to expect from us. And all of that together created a really solid culture. And anyone that's heard me talk before, I always talk about that it's all about the people. And it really is all about the people. And you can see in this day and age where things are a little tough, oftentimes companies are talking about being able to be efficient and be effective and being able to have more operational rigor. All that is really important. But who is it that does all those things? It's the people. And when you have people that are rallied around a unified mission and a unified sense of why, and they understand how those core values and operating principles work, then it makes it much, much easier to get people to all dig in, bring their best authentic self to work well as a team. And that's why people you saw at Tableau were there for so long, because they were so committed to the mission and purpose. And actually, we operated as a family. That's why we call it the data fam there. I'm happy to talk through any of the arcs as well.
Yeah, well, so what might be I think one thing that kind of popped out there that's kind of really intriguing is I think when people think about like organizational culture, they think about it how it like impacts the way that they employees execute and like expectations and kind of like mutual expectations between like different teams and what have you. But one thing that kind of popped to mind there is like how that impacted customer facing behavior. And like how you guys engage with your customers and like in a pre-sale environment and a post-sale environment. So maybe you could kind of give some examples of like one, what those kind of core, like an example of a core value, and then how that then turned into behaviors that then touched customers in a pre-sale environment and a post-sale environment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Pete, I'll give you two examples of that. One is let's go back way, way early days, because I know some of the listeners, people are at all different size companies. So some people are at startups, others are at much more established public companies. So early days, let's talk first about why mission is so important. This story is from very, very early days at Tableau. I call it my printer story, and you'll kind of understand why. It is very early. It was 2005 at Tableau, and anyone that's at a startup knows you have your mission, but the product is very early days. It doesn't do everything that you need it to do.
We have this, and then there's like a meme here, right? It's like the thing that you were sold ahead of time, and then it's like the reality.
Yeah, exactly. Because you want to sell the mission and the vision, but at the same time, like, you have to sell what you have now, right? You can't sell vaporware. And so it was early days at Tableau. It was 2005. I was on the phone on a web demo, and that was before that was super usual, right? People weren't really doing the inside sales web demo things.
Right.
And this one person was in the middle of a trial of Tableau. We did a 14-day trial, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, Kelly, I found this great visual. I have this great graph, and I'm trying to share it with someone. I'm trying to share it. And the only problem is, like, I want to buy the software, but I can't figure out how I can share it. So can you show me where the printer button is?" And I was like, well, you can't find the printer button because there isn't a print button. And this was back in early
feature
days.
Request.
Yeah, people couldn't, like, I wasn't smart enough to know you could do print screen.
Screenshot.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't easily accessible. This is a long time dating myself. And he said, "Okay, well, it's okay if I can't print. How about if I just export to PDF?" And I said, "Oh, export to PDF. That's a feature. It's coming soon, but we don't have it yet." And he said, "Okay, well, can't I just publish it to the web somewhere? Can I publish it up to a web page?" And I go, "Oh, okay, well, that's Tableau server, and that's in development right now. But now, as you mentioned early on, it's just like we're a desktop product, and we don't actually have that published to server." And he is like, "Well, Kelly, I need to be able to show what's on my screen to someone else. And if I can't print it and I can't export it to PDF and I can't put it up on the web somewhere, what am I supposed to do?" And
I don't know if I could buy, Kelly. I don't know if I could buy it. So Kelly's like,
Well, this is what it's like early days of being a
Oh, totally.
salesperson. You have to be able to think on your feet and really be able to tie everything back to your mission and vision. And I said to the customer, well, we're really just helping people to help see and understand their data. And it sounds like you found a way to do that. So you want to share it with someone, just tell me, we're like, is that person in a different office or they're in the same building? And they were like, oh, the person is here in the building. I said, sitting next to you, or where is it? The person's like, well, they're down the hall. And I said, are you on a desktop or a laptop? Said, I'm on a laptop. I go, well, here's your answer. Undock your laptop, pick your laptop up, walk down the hall, and you can show the person your visual. And the guy said, well, that's not really what I was expecting, but I'll try that.
I think that might work.
Yeah, exactly. So I hung up. And about 30, 45 minutes, called me back and said, Kelly, it absolutely works. And I said, yeah, it worked. And I said,
DocuSign's in your inbox.
All about helping people see and understand their data, because you couldn't do that before, and now you can do it. So all that other stuff is coming later. And he said, I believe in this mission so much. And I said, okay, do you want to buy it? And then it was a 10-pack. And he gave me a credit card, bought 10 licenses right there. It wasn't exactly a one-call close, but it was within the 14-day trial period.
And 1.5. There needed to be like walking down the hall first and then walking back. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pete, the reason I tell that story is the mission matters. It totally matters. But then also for those of people who are on the phone and you're early days in a startup and you don't have everything you're trying to do, you have to be really passionate of selling the mission, getting those early customers to believe what you believe, to really sign up for the why so that they can go on this journey with you. And if what you're doing, even the little tiny piece that you do early on, is so compelling, then it's still so much better than what they ultimately want, because no one else can do what you're doing. So that's story one.
That kernel. And I think that's like a really good, there's a couple like great like sales like insights in there as well. So one of the things that we talk about at Atrium with our sales team is always like get to the question under the question, because what'll happen is your customer, like they have this perception of this problem in their brand that they're trying to solve, and what they do is then they reduce it to like, they use their frame of reference to reduce it to like maybe some sort of solution, like a feature request there, or they have a question like I'm worried about XYZ and I'm not sure how to articulate it, so I'm going to articulate it the best that I can. And so if you immediately react to that, like in this case, it's like how can I print this? And if you immediately react, you're like, you can't print it, then the problem, of course, is that the prospect is going to be like, oh man. But well, obviously what you did there is like, well, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? Oh, well, like my boss is down the hall and I just need to show her that like this is real, right? Like, she's not a data analyst like I am or whatever, like, so she doesn't have to like dig into it or whatever. I don't have to share the view on the web or whatever. Literally, I just need to show her that it's not vaporware so I can buy. Oh, great. Undock your laptop and walk down there. Oh, why did I think of that? Right. And like, there's so many solutions, so many situations like that as a seller, as a customer success person, where if you get to the question under the question, you can then propose a better solution that then solves the problem in a way that doesn't require you to say no to the customer, or be like, oh, that's a great question, I guess I should go and ask engineering for that feature right now, versus like, oh, actually, so the way that we find most of our customers do this is they just like look at it on your keyboard right there. You see that? See where it says print screen right there? Yeah, just go ahead and hit that. So cool, now it's in your clipboard. Oh wow, Kelly, thanks for teaching me about how to use my computer. No problem, right? Like that's a phenomenal story. What was the second one?
Well, the second one, so we had talked about different stages. So that's really, really early days when you're just trying to sell something, just to identify how the mission and vision really matters. I think the other question you had asked is, around data centricity and having a data centric culture. I think all the companies that I've worked with have been so clear around that. And I think I've been really privileged because both at Tableau and at Gong, it's all about the data. And I think given the times that we're in right now, people really need to understand what is the reality of what's actually happening. And with Tableau, Tableau is all about data and empowering people to be able to answer their own questions. With Gong, it's about, again, our mission of at Gong, we unlock reality to help people
Reality.
reach their full potential. And it's about unlocking things that are usually locked. It's about reality, which is the data and the truths and the facts. And it's allowing people to reach their full potential. And in this day and age where everyone is trying to do more with less, and everyone is trying to help their salespeople to be more effective, that's clearly a reason that Gong works so well. And every company can be able to unlock the potential of their teams more with Gong. Even more than that, though, is it's so great to work at companies where you can live and breathe your own mission and be able to get better by using your own product. And by that is at Tableau, we were able to grow so fast because we use Tableau. And at Gong, we're able to grow so fast because we use Gong.
Yeah. Right. Like I said, I mean, I think that is one of the things that I really love about sales tech as like a category. Um, for a couple of reasons. Like one, selling to sellers is really fun. This is something that so like the stakeholders that we work with at Atrium, like our primary stakeholder is sales managers. So manager, like SDR managers, AE managers, sales leaders, et cetera. So like helping them use data in a democratized fashion because, they're not necessarily like full bore analysts, but they want to use data in order to improve the performance of their teams and so on and so forth. And so selling to those folks is actually really fun because you're talking the same language, right? As contrasted to like, maybe being a seller selling to finance, or maybe being a seller selling to analysts, so like data teams or whatever, like, Tableau or Looker or Mode or so on and so forth, or even like selling to HR. And so that's like a really fun superpower. The other really fun superpower is being able to like to drink your own champagne, as they say in Seattle, right, from Microsoft, right, or dog fooding, because not only in the case of if you are an analytics solution or what have you that like allows you to run your organization more crisply and more efficiently and what have you, that's really super powerful. And this is something that we do at our organization. I mean, we have like 10 sellers and like 6 SDRs, so we're not like a massive organization. We have some customers at Atrium are like in the 300, 400, 500 seller range, but it allows us to like really dog food that and then feed that back into the product organization. And we see that because we have a bunch of customers who are also in sales tech, like Orem is a good example and Scratchpad's a good example. And like the way that they're able to use their own products to kind of like really take them into 5th and 6th gear, drives a lot of like customer empathy, which is great, and also drives a lot of customer centricity in their engineering organizations. This is something that we do here at Atrium, is we actually have our product managers act as the internal CSMs for the Atrium sales organization. So that way a lot of organizations will talk about like, oh, product manager and engineering should be on like support tickets or what have you. That's like one way of handling that. But in our case, our PMs actually act as CSMs to the internal sales organization, just so they have like extreme customer empathy there. And that ends up being, the more that you can kind of do those sort of things, the better off that you can be. So Kelly, and I know that was kind of like Tableau, but
No, it wasn't actually. That was at Tableau. We called that Alpo, which we ate our own dog food at Tableau, and we had a whole Tableau on Tableau. At Gong, we do that too. We have Gong on Gong, and with Gong on Gong, it helps us not only be better internally, but it helps us create this whole center of excellence of how we're helping the Gong customers to do better and how they can optimize using the product. And I think it's a great thing, especially in all the sales tech, that people can use their own product. This is one of the reasons I've been so attracted to Gong, for the first joining the board, then being president and COO, going back to the board, because for me, I've spent over 30 years as a sales and go-to-market professional. And I talk to people all day long who are just like me, who are in sales, who care about data, who care about culture. And it was like a dream to go find Gong, because those are my 3 passion areas all wrapped into one: about sales and go-to-market, data, and culture. And being able to engage all day long with other CROs, CMOs, VPs of sales, sales ops, sales readiness, sales enablement. These are my type of people. And it's so fun. And then we have data that we can show them, which is the truth of how companies can actually get better. So everyone's speaking the same language, and it's really fun.
Yeah. So I know that you recently moved back to the board at Gong, and you've done a bunch of board work. And for the 5 years that before you became president and COO at Gong, you were on a variety. Like you are on a couple of boards right now, and then I think prior to that, you were on some boards that that you were on, and then off. What were the biggest takeaways from the many directorships that you've held? Like, what are the commonalities of the companies that have succeeded, and what have you seen where organizations struggle, or that our listeners might want to think about potentially avoiding?
Yeah, so I think some of them, and that's a great question, Pete. I think some of them we've talked about already. I think the common things that make companies very effective are, number one, everyone is aligned on what the mission is. What is it that your company is doing and why? Because everyone has to be working on the same mission. Otherwise, you have different people who are really talented that are going in different directions. So that's number one. Two, it is really important, and some companies don't do this, but very important to have cohesive core values or operating principles that does help to inform who are the type of people you're hiring, what is the culture of how people should interact with each other, and how do you interact with your customers. So and those need to actually be lived and breathed every single day. So mission and values that we talked about already. The third is it's all about the people. People ask me all the time, you've been at different companies, different boards. What are your top priorities? And my priorities are always the same. And I think I say this on every podcast ever because it's so important. People will say, well, what are your 3 priorities? And they'll ask that question of maybe for a startup, or when there's an economic downturn, or when you're about to IPO, or when you're doing international expansion. And everyone thinks that those priorities will be different depending on stage and situation. But no, the priorities are always the same. So for me, what are my priorities? Priority number 1 is people. Priority number 2 is people. And priority number 3 is people. And it's all about the people, because it's people who have the ideas. It's people who build the product and technology. It's people who sell. It's people who engage with your customers. It's people who hire other people. It's people who manage those people and keep them motivated. It's people who build and scale companies. So what people should be asking themselves now is, in these days and times, are you focused enough on your people? Are you focused on helping to create an environment where they can be successful, where they feel supported? Look at your engagement scores. Are they engaged? And what can you do to help people feel really unified and tied to the mission and values that we just talked about, to be putting your people first? Because if you take care of your people, that's going to drive better operational efficiency and focus. So number 1, mission. Number 2 are your core values and operating principles. 3 is people, which is really the most important one, but I'll put that on there. And then 4 is focus. You have to be able to focus. Everyone's trying to do so many different things, but you can only do so many things at a time. So the companies that I've been on board with that are able to do those things are the ones that do extremely well.
Yeah, the echo, or there was like a kind of a shadow in what you said there around the people are the things that are the folks that create all the value. And if you do that well, it kind of just, you can't help, it can't help but trickle down. And so I like to say that Atrium is kind of like the software instantiation of 2 books, maybe 3. One is called The Goal, which is a process engineering and lean manufacturing
I had to read that book for business school.
Written as a novel, which is you know, you're like, bro, process engineering and lean manufacturing sounds really exciting. It's like, no, but it's written as a novel, so it's a page turner. But it's all about like process optimization and measurement and improvement and like removing constraints and what have you, and diagnosing issues and continuous improvement. It's really the upshot. And then the second one is a book by Bill Walsh, who's a really famous football coach. He was a football coach at Stanford, and then he was a football coach at the San Francisco 49ers. And that book is called The Score Takes Care of Itself. And the kind of key tenet of it is that like it's very difficult to control outcomes, right? If you're like a football team or a football player, it's very hard to actually directly impact the score. But what you can do is you can focus on the thing that's in front of you, and you can do that very, very well. You can do the way that I like to describe this as relates to Atrium is we talk about sales success as being driven by a high quantity of high quality selling behavior, whether an SDR, an AE, AMCSM, et cetera. And so if you do that, if you engage in a high quantity of high quality selling behavior, then the score will take care of itself. And of course, what you have to do there is, in order to make sure that's happening, is you have to measure that to ensure that, one, there is a high quantity of high quality selling behavior going on. And then secondarily, you look for those constraints, like in the goal, and say, oh, this individual right here has these improvement areas as indicated metrically by this right here. Let's go ahead and address that and lift that up, right? Remove that constraint. But at the end of the day, it's all about the people, because the high order bit in knowledge worker organizations, it's different if you're in an organization that like maybe makes widgets, right? Or like manufacturing organization where there's like, things are being stamped out along an assembly line. This is especially the case in knowledge worker organizations where like the humans are the ones who are creating the donuts, if you will, which themselves are, ethereal software donuts or what have you. And so like, yes, the people are the most important thing because they are the fundamental unit of output. And then when we think about this with our customers, like, yes, that is true. And that's why it's so important to allow them to be measured and managed in a metrical way that like reveals constraints and allows everyone to get better there. So it's like, turns out like it's all about the people, right?
It's all about the people always, because people are who make things happen at the company. So I think that the question was first prompted of, on all these different boards, what has been most successful. And if you have a really strong culture with a great sense of purpose, of course you need a good product and technology too, where you create where people are tied to the purpose, they're tied to the why, and you take care of those people, then you're going to attract the people who are at the top of their game, and they're going to attract the people that are at the top of the game, because it's just like building an Olympic team. People want to be working alongside Olympic champions, and they want to be able to do their best work. And when they're working with other people who are just amazing, then that just brings an amazing culture, and the company can achieve great things. So all about the people, always.
Definitely. Well, I think it's kind of like the last part of our conversation here. I'd love to talk about kind of your experience at Gong. I think everybody here at MSP is obviously very intimate with the kind of conversation intelligence space. I don't know if that's still what Gartner's calling it.
It's pretty narrow. You're right. Gong is helping in a much larger way. Yeah.
Right. Started in a more narrow fashion, and then started adding tangential use cases. And I think that's kind of part of it. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience at Gong, how you first joined the organization, and the kind of like how you got more involved, and how that's changed over time.
Yeah. Well, Gong is of such a perfect fit for me, as I mentioned earlier, because my whole career, I've really been spent on sales, go-to-market, data, and culture. And so those were the three things I was always looking for when I joined boards. And so when Gong came around, I always knew I was going to join one of the sales tech boards, because that is really where I've spent my entire career on. But at the time, it was hard to see like who was actually going to evolve as a leader in this space. And so Gong came out so quickly to just have these amazing raving fans where people loved Gong and still love Gong. And Gong is so transformational to the way that they were doing work and helping people and companies to do so much better, that when the opportunity was there for me to join the board, I jumped at it because I thought, okay, this is just a perfect fit for me. It's helping people who are just like me to do better in sales by tapping into data and reality, and doing this in a way where it's creating more of a movement, because the customers are so excited because they're raving fans. Partners are great in the ecosystem as building this whole Gong collective. And then the Gongsters are just such a special culture. So I joined the board. After just a very short time on the board, I realized, oh my gosh, the opportunity here at Gong is so much bigger than I ever imagined. Because if you think about it, what Gong does is allows people to understand the reality of what's happening with their customers. So what are customers saying? What are customers doing? What are they asking for? And so much of sales has been done in the same way for so long. There hasn't been a real technology transformation. There have been more incremental transformation, but to really drastically change the way that things are done. And that's what Gong was doing. So I jumped at the opportunity to join as president and COO to be able to help create more of the scalable foundation, bring in the right people, the right processes, the right, all of the right systems to allow Gong to take advantage of this huge transformative opportunity that's in front of them. And right now, Pete, the time for Gong is better now than it has ever been before. And why is that? Because companies need to do more with less. And companies need to make their sales and go-to-market teams more effective. Everyone is talking about, how do I get more revenue? How do I understand what's going on with my customers? How do I mitigate churn and be able to really drive improved customer satisfaction? And that's what Gong can do, because Gong collects all of the data and conversations that are happening from all of your interaction points, whether it's emails, whether it's calls, whether it is what is going on in Slack, whatever it may be, brings that all in. And then there's over 100 integration points all through Gong Collective, so that you could really see a cohesive, collective understanding of what's going on. And this whole discussion, we've been talking about data. We need to be making decisions based on true data and true reality. And that's what Gong does. So it's been a joy to be able to be part of Gong. And whether it started as a board director, then internally, now as a board director again, I see Gong as really one of the huge transformational tech companies of this generation.
Yeah, I mean, like, we have probably at this point, I think Atrium has like nearly 300 customers, and you know, a bunch of them are running Gong as well.
They all should be running Gong.
We have an integration with Gong as well, and so organizations can pull their Gong data into a subset of KPIs within Atrium to allow them to set goals on those, on the various kind of like conversation intelligence metrics and what have you, and it really is super impactful for up-leveling the ability of people to change behavior and become better, right? So, you know, examples of that might be, you have reps who are maybe a little too like verbose, right? And like aren't and are talking over their customers, or like taking up all the airtime. Well, you can diagnose that, and that's great. But the way to actually drive better performance is to then change that behavior. And so the mechanism by which to do that is, like, first you have to know that there's a problem, of course, which means instrumentation and seeing it. Then what we have to do is we have to coach on and say, this is what you're going to do. After you say a sentence, instead of then saying and then saying the second sentence, I want you to put your tongue in the top of your mouth and stop talking. Right, like it's very clear instruction to the rep to help with like changing that behavior, and then we're going to measure whether or not that happens or not. And then you know, that's obviously like a very like basic example of like, you know, a talk ratio metric or what have you, but you can imagine the same sort of thing with like trackers. And so then the important thing, of course, is that then you have to come back to that to see, has that metric changed, right? So the way that organizations that use, Gong did, and people use Atrium for this with, all sorts of other metrics as well. Like, you have a pipeline hygiene problem as indicated by the fact that you have an ungodly number of untouched hops. We're going to go ahead and manage that, which is different than Bobby over here, who has a talk ratio problem. But we're going to set goals on that such that we can say, hey, are you within that goal, right? Like, are you tracking towards changing your behavior, or do we need to have some more coaching sessions around that? And so, like, being aware of reality first and then reacting to it in a way that makes people better is the kind of the key to the continuous improvement there. And I think that that'll continue to only be the case, and it'll probably end up in other parts of the organization as well. I think that it just kind of started with sales because it's kind of more inarguable in sales that measurement is really important, but you can imagine the similar sort of things happening in different parts of the organization. And like, our customer success team, of course, uses call recording like crazy for all of their, but specifically to change their behavior, not just to like, hey, we're going to record this so we have like a transcript of it, but to make people more performant. I imagine that that's probably, you guys see that pretty frequently, is Gong is showing up in different parts of the organization outside of just like the AEs, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think you mentioned, Pete, a lot about call recording and conversation intelligence. Gong is so much broader than that. And we like to talk about Gong as the most valuable platform for organizations, definitely for revenue professionals. And that is way beyond the sales team. Because if you can understand everything that's going on in a customer conversation, that will help you, of course, to up-level your salespeople. It helps to better serve your customers with your customer success organization, with support organization. It helps to understand what your customers are saying, and to know what they're asking for. That helps your product organization to know what new features or new development or new innovation should you be creating. It also helps to know what messages is resonating with your customers and what's going on with your competition. So that helps marketing, product marketing. So we're seeing at Gong, all organization is using Gong to understand what's going on across sales, across SDR, across customer success, across support, across marketing, across product, across all innovation of what's going on, across development, to understand what bugs are coming up and what are your customers saying. And so I think it's really important as you think about how you can best tap into data and reality to help make your organization better. You have to be able to really collectively understand what's going on with your customer conversations. And CRMs, they only collect a very, very limited amount of data. I mean, think your sales rep has to put the information in. And so Gong is giving a transformative opportunity for companies to understand a much more cohesive view of what's going on with the data, then drive all of the different functions within their organization, again, at this time now, to do more with less. It's a very compelling time for technologies like this.
Definitely. Well, Kelly, I think that's all the time that we have today. Want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Exciting to see the new chapter of your involvement at Gong, and also in the other board seats that you're on. And I'm sure we'll have you on Modern Sales Pros events in the future. Next time you're down in the San Francisco Bay Area, please do drop a note, and I will do the same when I'm up in Seattle. Visiting all the outreaches and the high spots and the so on and so forth of the world. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Okay.
Thank you for having me. Always fun. Thanks, Pete.
Bye.
Bye.